Everyone would take their seats. We're going to get started momentarily. Please take your seats. We're going to get started momentarily. Noisy, I can't hear the bells. You can't hear them either. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're going to get started. Everyone was having such a great time. I hated breaking up the party. Good evening. It is 6:00 p.m. on Tuesday, August the 9th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. I'd also like to welcome everyone in our City Council chambers, as well as our listening audience at WCBU. I'd also like to welcome the audience watching on cable channel 22. The council mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Sear.
Here.
Councilmember Grayad.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Euler. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Present.
And Councilmember Velpula. We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please join me, everyone, and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk.
We are at proclamations.
We have one proclamation tonight. Typically, we don't do proclamations for individuals, or I would say we rarely do proclamations for individuals, but this is one rare individual, so I've made an exception. We are going to celebrate and acknowledge the retirement of Undersheriff Rhonda Guyton. Rhonda is here also with former Sheriff Brian Asbell and her husband, Graylin Guyton. Can you come to the podium, please?
Good evening, Dr.
Good evening.
Mayor Rita Ali.
Welcome. I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas Peoria County Undersheriff Rhonda Guyton has lived a life of service. She has poured her heart into the Peoria area through her work in law enforcement, community service, and leadership. She has been a vocal advocate for women's health and honorably served her country as a specialist in the United States Army Reserve. And whereas during her 28-year tenure for the Peoria County Sheriff's Office, Under Sheriff Guyton has improved the criminal justice system, focusing on positive rehabilitation. She has held roles in corrections, investigations, community policing, and extradition. In 2017, Under Sheriff Guyton became the first African American woman to hold the office of Undersheriff as Corrections Superintendent since the inception of the Peoria County Sheriff's Office in 1825. And whereas Undersheriff Guyton is one of 3 people serving as a certified jail manager in Illinois, and under her leadership, the Peoria County Jail has continuously scored 100% in the Illinois Department of Corrections Jail Standards Inspection. She is passionate about providing resources to assist detainees. Under Sheriff Guyton created programs to help detainees pursue their education while attaining the job skills necessary to be successful upon release. She also spearheaded a program to provide mental health services to detainees and hosted several health initiatives to lay the groundwork for healthy living. And whereas Under Sheriff Guyton also founded the Living to Serve Foundation to advocate for preventative health screenings and mammograms for Black women. She has helped save the lives of many through her advocacy and transparency of her own breast cancer journey, bringing free mammograms to the community while raising funds for breast cancer awareness and prevention. And whereas Under Sheriff Guyton gives freely of her time, gifts, and talents through various boards and community programs, and has been recognized as a community leader with numerous awards such as Women of Influence, Women to Women Community Service Awards, and Doer of the Deeds Award, and her induction into the African American Hall of Fame Museum, just to name a few. Throughout it all, she has managed to balance her commitments and community work with her most important roles as wife, mother, and grandmother. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize Under Sheriff Rhonda Guyton's service to the City of Peoria and her continued service to the community on this final pursuit of happiness, also known as retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you so very much. Can I say a couple words? Can I say a couple things?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for the proclamation. I'm trying not to cry because, I don't want to cry. But thank you for this proclamation. I'm excited about retirement. I want to thank my husband and my kids for loaning me out to the community to do the work that I love to do. Thank you to former Sheriff Brian Asmel, who is also like a family member to me. He's my brother from another mother. I appreciate him so much and believing in me. And again, to my family, friends, co-workers, without you, I wouldn't have made it this far. So I appreciate you, and there's so much more to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
We are at the minutes.
Hey. Councilman Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held on July 26, 2022 as printed.
By Councilman Seer? No comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilman Riggenbach,
Aye.
Councilman Ruckriegel.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one town item. 22-274 is a request from the town officials to approve the July 2022 actual expenditures and to approve the August 2022 anticipated expenditures for the town of the city of Peoria.
Councilmember Graham?
Mayor Lee, I move to approve as outlined.
Seconded by Councilman Kelly. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilman Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilman Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 22-275 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency. 22-276 is a communication with a request to approve a 3-year contract with Gals LLC for commissioned and civilian uniforms. 22-277 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Mayor's Advisory Committee for Citizens with Disabilities with a request to concur of Jaishnu Surivnas. And 22-278 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended June 30th, 2022 unaudited financial report. And 22-279 is a request to approve the committee report policy session minutes from the July 19th, 2022 special City Council meeting regarding violence reduction funding.
Are there any items to remove from consent? Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 22-278, please.
Any other items? Can I get a motion to approve consent? Moved by Councilmember Allen, seconded by Councilmember Euler. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Riggenbach,
Aye.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
22-278 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended June 30th, 2022 unaudited financial report.
Member Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Crady. If you just go to your report page that has the graph for personal property replacement tax, please. Yeah. Can you talk to us about this specifically this graph and what should happen with this extra $9 million?
So obviously we're seeing, I think, historically large growth in our personal property replacement tax receipts this year. Just as a reminder, those are fees that we get from the state in lieu of corporate taxes that we are unable to collect. And so this is an area that, obviously the manager and I have discussed and we're looking at as part of our recommendations for the 2023 budget in terms of how we use really what is probably a one-time revenue source. We don't anticipate that we'll see this level of personal property replacement tax revenue next year, and we probably will articulate that in the budget. So as part of our budget discussion with council, we'll be bringing forward recommendations on how we could use some of this, looking at things like our pension funding.
Thank you, Director. So I had a meeting a few days ago, a phone meeting with Director Crady, and we should, I hope my colleagues around the Horseshoe and Madam Mayor support me in writing a new policy, adding to our policy. This is my 5th year sitting in this chair, and we have very strong, in my opinion, very strong balance sheet. I'd like to see, and I had many meetings, or at least a couple meetings with the director. We have about 6 accounts that shows a negative balance on this page. There's no numbers, but the last page of his report. I think this is my personal opinion. We should never, ever have any accounts that have a balance, a negative balance. We are very strong right now. I would like to tell or make a suggestion, suggest it to our city manager and our director of finance. Number one, take the money. There's an extra $9 million there to pay the $4.5 million that is due to the police and fire pension, number one. And the 5 other accounts, okay, and specifically the one about the garbage, the refuse account, for the garbage account, we have a negative $5 million right now. I understand that this $5 million, it's a loan from our own general account, which we don't pay any interest on it. I understand that. But I think we have an opportunity right now to have all our accounts the next few months. None of them should be in the negative, and I think it's time to do that. And I hope my colleagues and the city manager and director can come back to us in a few months, because some of these will automatically go and on the positive side. But I'm hoping the next 2 or 3 months we can have a policy that would say no more negative balance in any of these accounts moving forward. I think it'd be great. It's a great time to do it. We are strong financially, and that would give us a clean balance sheet moving forward. So that's something good that I'd love to leave behind to the next people who will sit in these chairs. So I hope all my colleagues can support me with this, and I hope the director and Mr. Manager, you can come back to us in a month or a couple months, at least by the next quarter for sure. That'd be July, August, September, and have all these accounts be in the positive. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Sear. I like where you're going with this. I like that thinking, and I guess I would ask Director Craddy and Manager Urick just kind of your reaction to that proposal. Put you on the spot like that, but.
Obviously, traditionally with fund balance policies, what you do look at is you look at your trajectory. You look at there being a plan to get yourself to that, in essence, no negative fund balance. And I know in conversations that we do have progress, especially looking at the garbage fund. There is some progress that we are making. And I think the other factor when I take a look at our negative fund balances is there's always opportunity costs. As we talk about with police and fire pension funding, at the levels that we have of the unfunded liabilities, that costs us 6.5% every year, that we're not funding those at the full level. So there is opportunity cost with taking this money and paying down the negative fund balances in lieu of the pension funding. So I think it all would be part of the conversation that we would have as we go through the budget process and looking at those opportunity costs.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would add is that with the garbage fund, what's been driving that deficit has been the 6% increase we have every year in our disposal costs. That will continue until landfill 2 is closed. Once landfill 2 closes and we move into the next phase of landfilling operations with GFL, that cost of disposal will drop by about $30 a ton, which will equate to a significant savings to this fund in terms of the expenses going out, if we keep the garbage fee at the same level that it's at. But again, that's a policy decision for the council to make. If council wants to say we want to put $5 million that we have in the general fund towards the garbage fund, you can do that. I think that fund is going to close itself up over time as we move into that next phase of the landfill.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, move
Yes.
to receive and file.
Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. There's another comment, Councilwoman Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got 2 quick comments. The first with regard to Councilman Sears' suggestion, does that, any of the excess money that we do have, Is that from the American Recovery Act? Because some of that I know cannot be used for pensions.
No, what we're talking about is we are seeing a significant amount of growth in personal property replacement
Okay.
taxes.
So it's just that funding? Okay. And then my second comment, I just wanted to thank you again, Director Craddy, for putting these quarterly reports together. I think they're monthly. Are they monthly? They're very helpful. It's really good to have this information so timely, and it really helps us see where we're at and know what's coming ahead. So I really appreciate these, and thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Riggenbach,
Aye.
Councilmember Reckriegel,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one presentation, 22-280, is a request from Councilmember Graham for a presentation from the Peoria Next Innovation Center. And on your desk, there is a handout.
I'm going to just turn it over to you, Councilman Graham.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our Township Supervisor, Latrina Leary, and I were present for the 15th anniversary celebration of Peoria Next Innovation Center, which is located in the 2nd District on Main Street. It's a facility that largely goes unnoticed by a lot of Peorians who drive by, as is yet another facility, and that would be on North University, called the Federal Science Lab. But it's amazing what goes on in these buildings. And as I think back on the years I've served on the council, when you consider that the council for sure changes at least one face every 2 years, I've gone through this about 11 times. And there are nights that I have come in here and I have not enjoyed what I've been asked to do or what I feel I'm compelled to do. And then there are nights when I come in that I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be a part of the process. And I will tell you that when I first got here in the 90s, sitting over there where Ruck Riegel's seat is, well, actually Kaler was there, I was where Denny Sear was. City leaders were very concerned about what was happening, and even before then, with heavy manufacturing jobs leaving our city and our region. And the top minds in this community were thinking about what we could do to diversify our Peoria economy, to make it less dependent on the heavy manufacturing jobs. And some very far-sighted people work with me on several city councils to help make Peoria a world-class healing center and medical mecca for not only our people, but people regionally and throughout the state. With the Cancer Center soon coming online, hurling protons to cure people of cancer just a few months from now. So these were momentous times. And out of a lot of these discussions about the need to diversify the economy, we had discussions involving leaders of Bradley University, the Northern Regional Research Lab, the hospitals. Councilmember Teplitz was in charge of the 2nd District then. Councilmember Thetford, 3rd District. We had earnest conversations about how we could move the ball down the field. John Morris couldn't be here tonight, but he worked very hard to create 4-year medical school, which we now have at the base of Main Street Hill. But I think out of all the work that was done, and later I would like us to hear from council members Thetford and Teplitz. Out of all the work that was done, one of the crown jewels of all of it was the Peoria Next Innovation Center. So in keeping with that, I think it would be wonderful for us to sit back and hear a presentation, which the mayor and I have already heard, Supervisor Leary, from our director of Peoria Next Innovation Center, Mike Stubbs. Mike, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Graham. Glad to be here. Thank you, the rest of you, for being interested in entrepreneurship and innovation and hearing what's happened over the last 15 years. So, as Councilmember Graham said, we had an open house on Wednesday last week. At that open house, we had 10 different people speak. I was fascinated to hear from a lot of the entrepreneurs themselves. And so, since we're not parading a bunch of different entrepreneurs in here tonight, I'm going to have to speak on behalf of them. But to hear it specifically from the people who started those companies is really kind of what changes your impression of what Peoria is and what we can do. But first I have to start with Peoria Next and a little bit of the history of Peoria Next. And so for those of you in the room, as Councilmember Graham said, a lot of people are familiar with some of the story or remember things that have happened throughout. But it's always good to hear a little bit of the history and what that looks like. And so in 2000, Dr. Brodsky, who is the president of Bradley University, and Dr. Rager, who was at the University of Illinois College of Medicine of Peoria, UEComp, got together and tried to figure out how can we make a regional bio-collaborative in the Peoria area? How can we make Peoria a regional hub from biomedical research or bioresearch? And so they also joined Peter Johnson, who was the head of the Ag Lab at different times, to come together and figure out, what does this look like? Does this strategy make sense? So they hired a company called Battelle Memorial Institute to do a SWOT analysis, of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, of what it looks like to actually create a bioregional collaborative in Peoria. And the results of that report were shocking to them as far as the amount of intellectual capital we have in Peoria. How do we change and leverage Peoria, change Peoria to leverage that intellectual capital? The PhDs at the Ag Lab, teaching at Bradley, in the medical campuses downtown, the patents that are coming out of those institutes. And so the report was completed, and Peoria Next got over 300 community members together to listen to the results of that report. And that presentation was on September 11th, 2001 at 7:30 in the morning. And by 7:46, the world had changed. Some of the momentum had stalled, and by 2002, it was picked up again. Caterpillar joined in, other companies around, or other institutes, I should say, around Peoria joined the Peoria Next mission, and they changed the name from the Peoria Regional Bio Collaborative to Peoria Next. They wanted to get a little broader from just a bio perspective. And so this included even Peoria District 150, the Ag Lab, Methodist at the time, OSF, some of the banking institutions and some research institutions as well, in addition to Bradley and ICC, the Heartland Partnership, and others. And they continued to collaborate and figure out what are ways in which we can create Peoria as an epicenter for technology and biotech startups. And so the physical manifestation of that was Peoria Next Innovation Center. Peoria Next Innovation Center held a ribbon cutting in an open house on August 30th, 2007, 15 years ago. And so I'm here to tell you kind of what has happened over those 15 years, right? So Peoria Next Innovation Center, over that time period, has been managed, operated, and funded by Bradley University. Through that, there's the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Bradley that provides no-cost consultation for those companies. But what the impact of Peoria Next has from those resources and from being a business incubator, which means that They are able to provide lower than market rents for people to come in, enjoy the space where the rents increase 10% a year to then graduate out in the community. So we've had 52 companies take advantage of those offerings, prior and current tenants. Those include companies like Natural Fiber Welding, that's removing petroleum and plastics from the environment and creating new apparel and leather replacement products, and have partnered with Ralph Lauren and BMW and Porsche and Patagonia. They've created over 250 jobs in the area and continue to expand. IntelliHot's created tankless water heaters that are included in the 49ers NFL stadium, as well as the Hilton and Hyatt across the world. Virtue Sense has created products that reduce falls in nursing homes by up to 94%. They measure people's gait and alert people when somebody needs help so that those people in long-term facilities as well as hospitals don't have more falls. And so we had Endotronics come and present. Harry Rowland from Endotronics was CEO. They've created a real-time blood pressure implant device for people that are at risk of heart failure to give them an early alert if they have a heart failure issue. They've done that heart implant, a permanent implant, in over 300 patients in their clinical trial. They're continuing to do that, and they hope that to be successful, and they just continue to expand as well. These are some of the examples of the companies that have taken advantage of Peoria Next, and the question also is why? Why Peoria Next? Why were they there? And one of the things that people don't hear about and don't understand is Peoria Next is home to wet labs, research laboratories. They're the only leasable wet lab space in a 90-mile radius. Outside, so what's that 90 miles? That ends up being University of Illinois Enterprise Works, also has wet labs. But in order to lease space there, you need a link to University of Illinois, a faculty member, a staff member, a researcher, a grad student to actually get space. And so companies that want to do a startup and have laboratory space, which means updated electrical, access to water, HVAC that doesn't recirculate, ability to exhaust fumes that occur, they come here because their only option is then in Chicago or St. Louis or Indianapolis, where it's at least 2 times and up to 4 times more expensive to be there. So without Peoria Next as a physical asset, not talking about the support and everything else that comes with that, the community, those companies that use that wet lab space, including Natural Fiber Welding, IntelliHot, Endotronics, Midwest Bioprocessing Center that's raised over $2 million in federal grants for virology research, Endotronics that I talked about, none of those companies would have been here. And the total impact of those 52 companies has been over 1,100 jobs created. They've raised over $419 million in equity and grants, which that's for a portion of the company. Those companies are worth billions of dollars, and they were started here and continue to grow here in Peoria. And they've hired over 130 full-time or intern students from Bradley, which is dear to my heart as I teach a course at Bradley in the spring, and I'm also the Director of Technology Commercialization at the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Bradley. And so overall, that's really the impact of Peoria Next, and we're trying to expand that impact, right? One of the things that people are less aware about is it's not just those wet labs and research opportunities. We have offices to rent to companies, as well as we've started a co-working space to increase that pipeline of companies that you need a mailing address and a desk and support services to start your idea so you can graduate into office space, so you can increase and graduate out into the community. Some of those companies include Hakatolo, that's doing solar panel development. So they help with the engineering of what those solar panel fields look like, as well as mainly for nonprofits. So they assist with the financial aspects of how you actually benefit from tax breaks when you're a nonprofit. One of the companies that presented Wednesday was Rain Construction. It was started by Bridget Booker. She was the first black female ironworker in her union in Peoria. She's changed how the maternity leave policy is for ironworkers across the United States. You now get 5 months before and after your due date from a maternity leave perspective. She had a tragic issue when she was an ironworker there, and through telling her story, it's birthed this new maternity policy for the rest of America, female ironworkers to then benefit from. Through that, she created her own construction company called Rain Construction, where she's a general contractor, an ironworking contractor, and a painting contractor. She's expanded from 1 office to 2, and now has a large project down in Springfield at the Capitol, and continues to expand down there across the state. So those are some ideas of what the offices look like. The 3rd floor, which originally was occupied by Caterpillar, is now occupied by the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center. Their headquarters for Illinois are in Peoria and are in the Innovation Center, and they assist manufacturers across different industries as a public-private partnership. From a co-working perspective, we had our first affiliate member co-worker speak at the Wednesday event, Stephen Snook. He started a company called Jesus Speaks. He was released from federal prison in February this year after serving 19 and a half years for nonviolent drug offenses, and decided that he wanted to start his own company that creates digital frames that has inspirational scriptures in people's homes that changes once a day. And so we've been assisting in how do you create that company, how do you fund it, how do you find manufacturers out of China, how do you do designers, and we started from scratch there and moved forward. He's now in the process of ordering his first order from China from manufacturers there based on funding that he's been able to find through contacts and connections through the Peoria Next Innovation Center. So those overall is really what we're doing, what we're all about at Peoria Next. That's what's happened over 15 years. Those companies' stories are what stories that Peoria should be proud of and know and be able to talk about and not be surprised that that's happening here. And so that's why I'm here to tell those stories. In addition to that, what I'm focused on is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, Strategy 1, which is to support economic innovation and digitization for the full range of businesses from startup to legacy corporations. And I feel like we're doing that at Peoria Next every day, and I'm here to tell those stories. You know, part of the objective is to increase awareness of what's happening there, but also increase awareness and adoption of new technologies and innovations. Through collaboration of those companies at Peoria Next, as well as in the community, you have people saying, well, I do A, and you do B, so maybe if we put those together, we can start a new company off of a new technology, create new businesses, new jobs, and new funding, and new economic support in the area. We increase the number of small business starts and scaling activities. One of the new startups in Peoria Next is Velocity Labs. They're taking advantage of those laboratory spaces that I talked about. The CEO is from Moscow, Idaho, but he's partnered with a regional co-founder, Mitch Johnson, Dr. Mitch Johnson, and they've created a bioanalysis company that's recruited PhD scientists from St. Louis and Canada, as well as researchers from as far as Philadelphia to come here, live here, and work here for that company. And so that is kind of how we increase the job opportunities and increase the economic opportunity through these companies there. And the final one is increased venture investment in regional startups. So how do we do that? And so on Thursday, after the open house, I was up in Chicago at the Illinois Growth and Innovation Fund Summit. The Illinois Growth and Innovation Fund is the venture arm of the Illinois State Treasurer's Office. They've invested $1 billion in the Illinois Growth and Innovation Fund, and it's a fund of funds, so they fund managers who fund companies. One of the companies that was funded through those funds as part of what they've received was Natural Fiber Welding. And so Steve Zika from Natural Fiber Welding went up to Chicago and presented to fund managers and presented to entrepreneurs and innovators up in Chicago to tell them what's happening in Peoria. So we don't have to do it ourselves. When you create great companies with great founders, they go and present that on your behalf and continue that cycle to get people down here. What was interesting was he was presenting on Natural Fiber Welding's ability to remove plastics and petroleum products from the environment, create a brand new Claris, as they call it, yarn to create fabrics, as well as a brand new Mirum product, which is a leather alternative. That leather alternative was on the patch of the U.S. Olympic team on the opening ceremonies in the Winter Olympics, just as an impact perspective. Downstate, they also had presentations from Sarah Ventures, who's invested in over 22 ag tech companies. And they had another individual who created a company near Champaign that's created software for sourcing products from scrapyards so that those products that are just sitting in scrapyards are able to get to used car manufacturers, they're able to get to auto repair shops and the pressure from the insurance companies to use more used parts. So they're changing the environment there to get those out. what we heard from the Chicago innovation companies was fintech and blockchain and NFTs and things that are nice and are interesting and fast. But what the message was what's happening downstate, where we're getting less investment, are things that are really changing the world and things that need to happen and need to get funding in order to continue on a path where we need to go. And so it changed the interest of those investment companies, not how do we go down to recruit companies to Chicago to invest in them to get to Chicago, and more how do we support downstate companies, and if we do get down there, who do we need to talk to and what we need to do to make sure that that's happening and growing in a central Illinois area. And so we're in the process of planning an event for them to invite all those fund managers to come down and hear the stories and the remarkable stories that are happening in Peoria, at Peoria Next, and other places in this economy. So with that, I want to say that innovation's happening now. It's happening every day. It's been happening over 15 years. It just takes a while, right? You start an innovation center, the next year you might not have allowed an update, or the next year after that. I'm originally from Peoria. I graduated from Richwoods. I then went to University of Illinois, was in Chicago for 10 years, was in Bloomington for 4, and took the Amtrak up and back on Tuesdays and Thursdays and worked remote Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 3 years. I worked fully remote for 1 year because of COVID. And then I decided, you know what, let's move back to Peoria. So I moved back here with my family where the grandparents are and relatives are. And I came back to run Peoria Next Innovation Center for these reasons. And over my 15 years that I was gone, I was very surprised when I entered this position a year ago to learn all of what has happened. And it's really inspiring to meet all of the different entrepreneurs that are leading these companies. And so that's the message I wanted to give you. And overall, from the people listening, the idea is how do we better collaborate and really capitalize on the intellectual capital we have here to move forward and move our economy forward. So thank you.
Councilman, thank you for bringing this presentation forward. I think there may be some questions or comments from the council, but I just want to start by saying, Mr. Stubbs, you are the right leader for Peoria Next. You give us hope. You're very brilliant in your presentation and telling your stories, telling other people's stories, but I'm so happy you also told your own story, from Peoria, and you came back to Peoria, and we're very blessed to have you, so thank you very much. Any questions from the council or comments? Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo those same sentiments. Not surprised by a fellow Richwoods grad, but no, seriously though, thank you, Councilman Greb, for bringing this presentation. I misread my calendar last week, and so I missed the open house, but I'm glad that you came in today. And I think it's so important, as Councilman Greb said, that we have to diversify. We don't forget our traditional roots of manufacturing. Manufacturing will always be part of the fingerprint of Peoria, but we have to start diversifying and really being a place where it can play in Peoria, and you telling those stories demonstrates that it can play in Peoria, and it will play in Peoria. So I'm very excited about what the next 15 years look like for this amazing organization, and look forward to supporting it any way I can as well too. So thank you for coming, Director Stubbs, and thank you, Councilman Greb, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councilman, part 2? Oh, here we go. There we go.
Have a chance to hear from 2 members of the classes in the latter part of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century who helped make Mike Stubbs happen. And it was with great peril, and Mike, I think you'll benefit by hearing from these 2 dedicated public servants who kind of set the table for you. And I think we're not doing this in any particular order, but 2nd District Councilperson Marcella Teplitz, you have the scars to show for what you did to make this happen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. He's great. Don't let him get away. I just had a couple comments to make, but back in the council, our era. So, go ahead. went on the council in 2001. And I have to mention a name that's not been mentioned yet tonight, without whom it wouldn't have happened, Dave Ransberg. So, some of us began a conversation which had started with Don Rager and some other brilliant people in Peoria. Came around to the council's going to have a role here. So, luckily for me, the mayor was out of town, so I went to the meeting. And here we have all the big CEOs, and they're all sitting around trying to think, and they're like, what are we going to do? Who are we going to get from the city council to be on this? And what are we going to do? And they kicked some names around, and I looked around the room, all men, of course, and I said, it's my district, I'm taking it. And they're going, oh, okay. And that was all. So away we went, and it was a wild ride. But we worked very hard, particularly with the owner of the block where Peoria Next is. It was, the entire block was owned by Midas Muffler. And I can't tell you how many days I spent sitting in that old muffler shop, sometimes with the mayor, sometimes without, talking to the owner. And you know what? He bought into what we were talking about, what you heard tonight. Entrepreneurial ability to make Peoria great. And he became a spokesperson for the whole group. So we were successful in acquiring his property. Our development director, they're now down across from the car wash in a new building, and they were very, very happy. Demolished the building, made plans to build. And I could talk for hours, but I won't, of course, for change, on all the good plans we had and things we initiated and things that began to happen. And Gail was instrumental, of course, as representative of the 3rd District, and Clyde Gully from the 1st District. And so we worked very hard. We created an ordinance, which was hard going, but we got the ordinance done, which would create a commission to oversee what was going to be happening. And I'm very happy to say that on the night we brought it before the council, it passed unanimously. Remember that? It was a great night, thank you. So keep up the good work. Don't let this slip out from your hands. Keep as many of the startups in Peoria as you can, because we saw very often they started and they were gone. Started and gone. And we can't keep them all, but let's keep as many as we can. So keep up the good work. Gail?
Okay, she's always been a really hard act to follow. So I think just a couple things. You know, before Peoria Next, we had the whole concept of the Med Tech District, which, again, former council member Teplitz really did spearhead, and it was an incredible amount of work. And it was kind of controversial initially, because it was really the first time that, first of all, the various hospitals, if you will, kind of worked together on the concept of making Peoria an incredibly great med tech center, which it is now. It was pretty good then. It's incredible now. And Methodist was in Councilwoman Teplitz's district, and OSF was in mine. And so, you know, representing those institutions, the Ag Lab was in hers. You know, we were able to kind of bring people together and get them to talk when they really hadn't been talking much before. And I don't have to tell all of you that you sit around here and you know, so much of your time is spent making sure the streets are plowed and the ordinances are correct and the budget is okay. And then once in a while, you get an opportunity to work on something that truly is life-changing as far as the community is concerned. And the whole implementation of the MedTech district, the Children's Hospital, which I was blessed to assist in the role of a council member to support, and other incredible things that happen. So and Peoria Next, which, people weren't super supportive of that concept initially. And again, that's not news to all of you, okay? Many really good, innovative things take a while to get support, even on the council itself. But this is truly, Peoria Next is the outgrowth of a collaborative initiative that really has changed the city. And Marcel and I, all we did is put people in a room and lock them in. No, we didn't do that. But no, we just really assisted in getting them to talk and moving this forward, along with a lot of other people. And Councilman Graham was very instrumental. Former Councilman Morris was as well. So, and again, I don't have to tell you, it's kind of rough on controversial matters to get a unanimous vote. So that was really a big deal. But please continue to support it. And I just would echo what Councilman Teplitz said. To the best of your ability, support them. Maybe help these startups get grants if that's what they need to stay here in Peoria. And we can't say goodbye to manufacturing, but we truly do need to continue to support the magnificent med tech center that Peoria has become. Thank you. And thank you so much for letting us come and, look at how nice everything looks and give you guys a little grief. Thank you. No, not tonight. We didn't
Councilwoman Emeritus, thank you very much for the history. Yes, appreciate it. Thank you, Councilman Graham. You get to take credit as well. Did you have anything else?
Receive and file this. I'd move to receive and file this presentation.
Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Regenbach.
Aye.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We are at regular business. 22-281 is a communication from the city manager with a request to approve the program guidelines and application for violence reduction programs funded through the American Rescue Plan.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, we had our policy session about violence reduction funding, and we wanted to bring back the plan for the first RFP to just get the council's blessing. I'd like to ask Community Development Director Joe Doolin to come forward. His team, who has a lot of experience with putting together grant applications through the Community Services, our Community Development Block Grant Human Services Program, let them come forward and just talk about what's in the documentation that we put together, and hopefully council will support the adoption of this program.
Director Doolin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Manager, Council. In your packet, you have a couple different documents that the Community Development Department put together. I want to just go through it quickly with some high points to see if there's any questions or clarification or changes that you want to make, and then discuss the timeline a little bit about what staff is thinking. The city manager asked the Community Development Department to kind of handle the first part of this process, essentially taking the application, getting out in the public, requesting proposals, taking those proposals to the CDBG Public Advisory Commission, and then bringing back to council. Once the proposals are selected and agreements are made with agencies who are going to be awarded these funds, it'll be shifted to the police department to administer the programs going forward. We modeled it after a program in Indianapolis run by a foundation in Indianapolis, specifically with their American Rescue Plan funds. So we took a lot of what they had put together, and to create this kind of a mixture of what they did, the feedback that council provided at the policy session, and then our public service application that we previously do with our community development block grant funds. If approved tonight, the application will be released next Monday. We will be working very closely with Stacy Peterson on making sure that we publicize it, get a press release out, and make it available to as many people possible to put it in front of as many organizations, nonprofit agencies, grassroots groups that may want to apply for this funding. We'll also work with the police department as well to see if there's any national organizations or other people doing this work that aren't just local, and try to see if they're interested in partnering with a local organization to do the work as well. So we'll do our best to get it out to as many people as possible with the desired outcome of having the best programs come forward that will actually make a significant impact in violence reduction in the city of Peoria. So if approved tonight, the timeline, which is towards the end of the program guidelines, the application will go out Monday. They will be due back to city staff on September 9th. After September 9th, the CDBG Public Advisory Commission will begin reviewing and scoring the applications. On September 26th, all the scoring will be submitted back to staff. At that point, the scoring and all of the proposals that we have received will be sent to council prior to the council meeting for approval. City staff will be happy to walk through any of those proposals with council, so we'll make sure you get copies of all of them, not just any that are being scored. So, and then the program will be awarded essentially on a 14-month award date, so November and December of this year, and calendar year 2023. So that's the tentative schedule going forward. As you can see throughout the program guidelines and the application, we work very closely with kind of our legal department, our economic development department, our police department, to really put together an application that we think captures all of the things that could lead to some long-term impact in our community of reducing violence. So as you see, what we're trying to get organizations to submit to us for grading and scoring are evidence-based programs that specifically have quantitative and qualitative measures to show the impact it makes in a community. I think it's excellent when organizations can talk about their outreach efforts. We met with 100 kids, we met with 100 students, but what our application is really trying to get people to show us are what are the results that those programs had on those kids. It's not necessarily just doing the outreach efforts, it's actually, have you reduced crime rates in town? Have you reduced follow-up arrests, things like that? And the last thing I do want to mention is, based on the feedback from council, we did include some, we worked with our legal department to include some of the legal expungement and the type of programs as well, so they would be eligible under this funding as well. So, Mr. Manager, I didn't know if there's anything else I forgot or you need to add?
No, I think we'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have about the proposal. One thing, I think we set a minimum award of $50,000 and a max award of $250,000.
I just had one quick question, and it's related to the boxes that you have. You know, question 1, there's a box. Question 2, there's a bigger box. Question 3, there's a smaller box. Are there character or word limits associated with these boxes, or?
No, ma'am.
So there's no limit on the responses? Okay, thank you.
The benefits of putting together an application, you can think of all the things you don't like about other applications that we have filed over the last few years, and when you're trying to tell a solid narrative about your program and you hit that character limit, so we didn't want to do that to other people.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your work on this, Director Doolin. One suggestion under question 4, it says, what specific geographic area does this program serve? And it says list census tracts or citywide. And I know that these funds have to be spent in qualified census tracts, correct? Part of the designation?
Not necessarily. So it can be a citywide program. I think that there's preference given and more flexibility if they're spent in those qualified census tracts. And where most of our violence is occurring in the qualified census tracts, so it would, but that, that it lets the applicants have that opportunity to explain how they would run the program.
Okay, good. No, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a follow-up question, Director Doolan. I know you mentioned that it's been drafted in a way that legal assistance programs can apply for funds for work they do for expungement or re-entry programs and that kind of thing to help individuals get jobs after they've done their time and gotten out of jail. But I'm wondering which area I can't quite tell which area that would be included under from the descriptions. Would it be empowering youth and young adults, or restoration and resilience, or intervention?
I think that part of the way the application was written is to be a little open-ended. Specifically, where we talk about some of that work is the third bullet point under intervention.
Okay, I see that.
I think, what we're really trying to capture with this is someone to bring a program that can show solid results. And the categories, I think, are specific enough to give applicants ideas of where they should be focused, but I don't think limiting enough to someone who has a program that might be very impactful in our community from stopping them from applying.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Director. Can I get a motion to approve? Moved by Councilmember Jensen, seconded by Councilmember Jackson. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your work, Director. Madam Clerk?
22-282 is a communication from the City Manager and Assistant City Manager with a request to approve expanding the Small Business Rise Program grant allocation for an amount not to exceed $1.5 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to turn the floor over to Assistant City Manager Kimberly Richardson to talk about our request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager and Mayor and Council. Good evening. This is my first time at the podium, so what a glorious reason to be at the podium, to come to you with a problem that's a wonderful problem to have. When we came to the council in March, we typically, as the economic development team, see on average about 25 to 50 applications for our programs at maximum. Due to our efforts working with our community partners, our RISE program have received over 300 applications. And the first part of the program, which has been focused on the recovery efforts of businesses who qualified, we had 36 applicants who met those qualifications and were able to disperse those funds. However, in doing so, we need more additional funding to be allocated to this program in particular to be able to address the additional qualified applicants. So when we talk about qualified applicants, we're looking at it from the standpoint of expansion. So those businesses are existing businesses who are looking to expand either by capital projects or also by services, employment, retention of employment of their workers. We've seen a number of our businesses say that we would love to give a little bonus to our employees for retention purposes, but with costs of energy and other costs increasing, they didn't have the bandwidth to provide that. And then we have our startups. These are individuals who are coming into this wanting to do and provide services for our community. How can we utilize these funds to best support them? And so we've taken a holistic approach with this program. So even though the first 36 that have gone out, many of you know those names or know those businesses. We are looking at a number of startups, up to possibly 90 startups, if going through the process and adequately are able to qualify, we could be supporting through this program. In doing so, we had a couple of conversations with a few of our applicants, and a number of them said, it's great, we're happy to receive this funding, but what to do next? And so without having the technical support really in our department to support that question, we then moved on to ask the Small Business Development Center if they would be willing to assist us. And they said, yes, we look forward to being a partner in this. And so now all of our startups who are qualified for funding will be able to go through their program and get additional technical support as condition to receiving the funds. And this is one way to ensure that we're getting them on the proper legging to be able to be a successful business and start in a way that they are able to know what resources are, one, required of them to have, and two, what resources that are available to them that they may not know exist. So with that, we are looking to expand the allocation to $1.5 million to satisfy the program, and also continue the efforts of supporting our other small business programs that are currently in existence today.
And Ms. Richardson, this is the Bradley University Small Business Development Center, correct?
That is correct. Okay. And thank you, Mayor. I also want to note and thank that we did have community navigators that we worked with that included the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce, the Minority Business Development Center, and the Greater Peoria Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as well. They really helped us on the front end with getting the word out and helping individuals complete the application. So I want to say thank you to them and to our staff member Uriah Kilgallen, who really has been the behind-the-scenes person trying to manage all of this while we try to get this through.
Wow. Comments, questions for Ms. Richardson? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been a fan of this program, but part of your presentation confuses me a little bit. Are you saying that businesses are applying for these grants, and once they get the grant, they don't know what to do with it?
People are applying for money, and they are applying because there's a grant. But small business owners who apply for the funding don't know because they don't have the same type of experience that an established business will. And so they ask the question, so when you provide me this funding, are you going to give me some technical support with that? That was the question, and our response was, that's a good question. We need to provide that. And so that's when we started looking at our community partners.
Let me just make sure I understand. Applying for a grant, and I win the grant, now I'm going to get advice on how to use the grant. I don't know, that it seems a little backward.
So sure, think about a small business who a person has a vision, they know their product, they sell, they have a great product. They know their product, but they don't know how to run a business. And that's the part that we want to support them in. So yes, I may know how to do my particular business well, but I don't know how to scale my business up to make it more visible marketing-wise, or I don't know the ins and outs of how to navigate the taxing system. There's things about being a business owner that everyone has that opportunity to know. They just have this great idea, and they can show proof of concept that that idea can be something that they have a customer base for. But now they're trying to figure out, how do I expand it and make it viable long term? And that's where we knew we needed to make sure, before we give funding out to anyone, that we provided them that technical support first, not after the funding is submitted, but before the funding is provided. And again, those are those who are qualified. Not everyone may be qualified to get this funding.
Okay, it sounds to me like what they need is that kind of help, which doesn't have a lot to do with cash.
Correct.
So why are we giving them cash?
The program is based on the economic losses or the hardships that they've faced because of the pandemic. So the applicants have had to prove up that they have a loss.
That's what I wanted to hear.
But-
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like you said, Assistant Manager Richardson, this is a good problem to have as we'll be able to support additional businesses. And I think when you talk about raising the economic floor of Peoria and providing the equity that is necessary in supporting women's owned business and minority businesses, this is exactly what we need to do. And when you think of minority owned businesses and women's owned business, traditionally this has not been a space for these type of businesses. They haven't had the resources or some of the support measures to scale up, if you will. And so to be able to provide that holistic approach and be able to assist with somebody maybe enhancing their POS system or their website or some of the great things that they do at Peoria Next, you know, that this is what it's about. And so I'm very excited about this. I'm excited to support this, and I appreciate your team putting additional effort into doing this as we look to continue to grow our economy and recover from the pandemic. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Very welcome. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I was just, I'm happy to hear that there's potentially 90 startups, and based on what we heard just 2 weeks ago from our diversity director, hopefully some of the would-be startups will come from that group that she recently talked about. So I'm excited, and we need to do whatever we can, especially to provide technical support to make sure that once these businesses are started that they're able to succeed. So I'm excited, and I will definitely vote in favor of this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I make one point before we go? Of the applicants that have been awarded, 70% have been women minority-owned businesses. 70% so far of awardees have been women-owned minority businesses.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple questions. Since you're asking for an amount not to exceed 1.5 million, and we were originally had 2.4 million, does that mean we'll have about a $500,000 left? No?
It means that we're using it for other programs, other economic development programs. We still have those
$1 million
funds.
for those. So I guess my question is, I mean, were we thinking of using this 1.5 million for anything else? Because it just seems like a big step going from 350,000 to 1.5 million, and I don't want to do that and hurt other programs we were planning to use the money for.
That's a great point, and I just want to articulate that no, we're not taking funds from other programs. In fact, the way that the allocation was initially set up, these were smaller programs, so what we did was combine all these initiatives under the RISE program, and the RISE program is the support mechanism that we're using to allocate those funds that were initially individual set programs that was brought to the City Council. So we've already have encumbered over $200,000, and I know that number is going to increase from the commercial facade rehab program, and that was a part of that $2.4 million that was allocated by the City Council. So we've already know that if we are able to allocate all the funds under the RISE program, we will have spent the majority of our committed dollars with the ARPA funds for this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Assistant Manager Richardson. Is there a motion out there? Moved by Councilmember Jackson to approve, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any other comments or questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
22-283 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to adopt an ordinance amending the Special Service Area Agreement between the City of Peoria and Westlake Shopping Center.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask our Corporation Council to walk through some of the changes that we have here with this amendment, this proposed amendment.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since 2010, the city's had a special service area at the Westlake Shopping Center. If you recall, in the fall, we had lengthy discussions about some amendments to that agreement that would allow for the developer to do a substantial refinancing. As he proposed at the time, he was looking to do a build-out or a renovation of a vacant space to put a new tenant in there, and therefore was seeking some additional funding through the loan and the partner in the agreement, which is Morton Community Bank. Due to some cost overruns, he is seeking an additional $500,000 from Morton Community Bank. Keep in mind, that does not really have an impact on any obligation that the city has. The sales tax levy rate would stay the same. The city doesn't have any liability upon the added debt or any indebtedness of the SSA. Nothing in that agreement that's proposed increases the life of the SSA or any period of the indebtedness, and nothing about it alters any sort of boundaries. In effect, the passage of this agreement really only adds to the debt that was approved back in the fall for the developer to help cover those cost overruns. And with that, the developer and his attorney are here if there are any more specific questions for them.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Corporation Counsel, for elaborating on this. I am in support of this evening. With it being based in District 4, we're very fortunate to have Westlake Shopping Center in District 4. As stated, this amendment does not increase the current SSA fee of 0.75, and it adds no additional liability to the city. So I will be supporting this evening. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Did you have a motion, Councilmember Allen?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any other questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at unfinished business. 22-273 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending existing use with approvals as a special use with waivers in a Class R6 multifamily residential district and a Class R8 multifamily residential district for an existing neighborhood center to allow parking lot improvements, a new accessory storage structure, and to add property to the boundary of the special use for the property located at 800 Northeast Madison Avenue and 816 Northeast Madison Avenue, 803 and 809 Northeast Jefferson Avenue, with the property to be added located at 724 and 814 Northeast Madison Avenue, 801 and 815 Northeast Jefferson Avenue, and 406 Wayne Street, all in Peoria, Illinois.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to say that after our last meeting when we deferred this, that Director Doolin, Assistant Director Allison, and Urban Planner Carrie Lynn White and I met with CEO Marcellus Somerville and the team from Friendship House and discussed this. And this is a classic example of their simple project of expanding the kitchen, adding the drive-through, kind of took on a life of its own here. A couple things that I think were particularly concerning to me, specifically after some of the things we've dealt with in other parts of town with sidewalks and landscaping and whatnot, was what waiver they were requesting for around the parking lot at Madison and Wayne Street. Well, a couple of things came to light, and if you look at page 2 on the waivers there, the perimeter landscaping requirement would require them to basically tear up the existing parking lot and lose a couple feet of parking, which would essentially destroy the purpose of the parking lot. So that is a waiver that I think is acceptable for us to take and allow. There could be potential for an expanded parking lot because there is a sliver owned by a third party that they are potentially working to acquire. So if that parking lot is expanded or replaced, we will revisit the perimeter landscaping requirements at that time. And we made it clear that will be revisited, because oftentimes when we say it was to be revisited, people's memories are different. So in this case, I'm confident that the message was heard and received. Then the transitional buffer yard on the west side of the parking lot, the adjacent lot to that is a city-owned lot, actually. So I didn't think that it was necessary for us to impose that as long as the city owned the lot. And we added the stipulation that when that lot, that 724 Northeast Madison, is developed, that the transitional buffer yard needs to be revisited. Now, we've also got our land bank manager, Matt Smith, involved in this, so that, if that's a potential benefit to Friendship House down the road, there could be a transfer of ownership directly to them, in which case the transitional buffer yard, again, would not even be necessary. So all in all, it was a really good meeting, and this is a new part of the 3rd District, so I was very excited to be able to meet Mr. Somerville and many of the staff there. And in fact, they were having a block party that Friday afternoon, so I had to run home and get my boys so they could get their picture taken with some of the Bradley men's basketball players that afternoon. So it was a win for all of us. With that being said, I would move for approval.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Thank you for that background, Councilman Riggenbach. I'm glad to hear that the issues are being addressed and the concerns are mitigated. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilman Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilman Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
Is there additional unfinished business?
No.
No. Then we're on to new business.
Councilmember Graham?
I want to thank Captain McCall for sticking around here, since this is an item that will indubitably come to his attention. By the way, this has been an excellent evening. Staff has been hitting the ball out of the park over and over and over again. And today I was very heartened to receive an email from our Corporation Counsel, Chrissy Kapuska, in reference to red light cameras. Now, I know that the devil is always going to be in the details as it relates to red light cameras, but perhaps we could begin with this, with kind of an exposition of what we all learned this afternoon. If we had time to read the email, it was rather lengthy, and I think those people listening at home and our constituents would be very interested in what we've found. Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Councilman. A couple weeks ago, the council had a discussion about the use of red light cameras and why we were not doing that here in Peoria. And the simple fact is, at this point, the state statute only authorizes it for the city of Chicago and 8 particular counties. It was interesting that we decided to look a little further into that to figure out why those particular counties were laid out in the statute. At first, we thought perhaps it had something to do with population or traffic counts. But as we used our law school skills and went back through the legislative history, we determined that that did not seem to be the case. that when we looked at the House amendment that was made in 2006 that added these particular counties, the representative that proposed it actually talked about a train accident that had occurred in their hometown, and based on that program, they had worked out based on that train accident it was in DuPage County, it was on Wooddale Road. There was some cameras that had been installed along the railroad track, and they decided to then expand that program. They had initially worked out a pilot program with the city of Chicago, and what's most interesting in the legislative history is when they start to talk about the other municipalities that were going to be added, they thank Senator Cullerton in the Senate for helping with hammering out the language. And they specifically use the phrase, these are the counties that wanted the permissive ability to do this, and the municipalities that wanted the permissive ability to do this. So as a result, we have a great piece of legislation. What that tells us from sort of a legislative interpretation standpoint is it appears that they included anybody that had expressed an interest at the time. I think that would lead to support for an amendment to that statute if we were to ask any of our local legislators to perhaps add Peoria County to it. There does not appear, at least from our research, to see that we could see any other reasons other than those that wanted the permissive ability to be added. And if that is something that we want, then again, I think that would be good evidence to show to our local legislators to support that amendment. Thank you.
And these red light cameras are generally put in high impact areas where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of potentially a lot of speeding, a lot of potential for mischief. They certainly wouldn't be everywhere, but they could really, I believe, and my constituents believe, that they would really help to moderate some of the issues that we have in Peoria as relates to speeding. There are some motorists who seem to feel that the traffic lights are merely advisory. And so we see people running through the light, etc. Now, I will say this, and so many of you already know this, one of the reasons some folks are rather guarded about going with the red light camera system is because when they were utilized in Chicago, there was some phasing of the lights that occurred way too quickly. In other words, instead of that yellow being there for a reasonable amount of time to clear the intersection, it was going from like green to red, and a lot of people were getting tickets unnecessarily because the system wasn't set up in such a way, either intentionally or unintentionally, to provide the synchronicity that would allow us to really target lawbreakers instead of people who weren't breaking the law. I believe those issues have been resolved now, and my friends and colleagues in Chicago area are very happy that this red light camera system exists. I will tell you they have complete, total Prussian efficiency in terms of generating these tickets. God help you if you decide you're going to jump a light where these are in place in Chicago. You're going to get generated to you. Maybe it's going to be on red cardstock or whatever, a fine, and I don't know what it's running right now in Chicago. It was $100 not too long ago. And unless a police officer actually stops you, it will not go as a moving violation down to the Secretary of State's office. But if you don't pay it, then that's going to be a problem for you somewhere down the road. So I think what we have to decide as a body is whether or not we think it would be advantageous for us to have red light cameras in strategic areas of Peoria. And even more than that, since we're not state lawmakers, although we have had some of our graduates go down to Springfield who have sat around the horseshoe, we have got to enlist the help of some of our state lawmakers to get this crafted or embedded in some piece of legislation that will pass the General Assembly if we decide as a body that we think this is the direction we can go. And as you might expect, Chief Echeverry has already been doing some thinking about this.
Yep.
And He's way ahead of all of us, by the way. But he's got a good captain here who's assisting him. But I think this is a subject for discussion and follow-up, and I appreciate staff's efforts to look into this. It was very interesting reading the conversation between Mike Madigan and others, a little piece of history, a slice of history, as we were taking a look at this legislation. So it looks like we're not forbidden from having this, and it didn't preclude us from having it, so we have to decide if we want to do it. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome. Good discovery. Councilwoman Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to let everyone know, remind the listening audience and all those that are here to come to Ignite Peoria is this Saturday at the Peoria Civic Center. It's one of the annual events sponsored by Arts Partners. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's quite fun. There's lots of booths, performances of artists. There's areas where you can go do 3D robotics and fly drones, and there's lots of things to do for kids and people of all different ages. And it goes from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The admission is free, and it's a great event. So if you're looking for something to do, please head on over to the Civic Center for an hour or two, especially if you got young kids. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great point, Councilman Greb. I would ask, though, if we do go down that road, that maybe we look to figure out a way that we can survey the community just to see how they feel about the incorporation of those lights. But speeding is one of the top concerns that I hear in my district, so I definitely support us exploring that opportunity. But I think definitely just having some of that community feedback would be great as far as potential implementation. And then secondly, I just want to give a huge shout out to the Peoria Park District for another successful Soul Fest weekend. It was a great time on the riverfront. I enjoyed it both Friday and Saturday, and they had the Gospel Fest on Sunday. I had a chance to meet my childhood crush, Maya. I'm not going to lie, shameless plug there. But it was a good time, though, so definitely shout out to the committee. Shout out to the chair of that committee, Dr. Kyle Bright, good friend of mine, and all the vendors and everyone else that puts together that event, and our police department being present as well too. I haven't heard about any incidents or anything, so it was a great time. Appreciate everyone that came out to support that event, and it's so important that we come out and we support those events so that way we can continue to keep getting quality entertainment here in the River City. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're very welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask our Corporation Counsel if it would be proper for myself or for the council to ask the manager to bring back a resolution at our next meeting for approval to memorialize our request to our legislators on this red light camera business.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Who said that?
Riggenbach?
Oh, Councilman Riggenbach. I'm looking for a face to match that voice. Oh, God. Councilman Riggenbach?
Hey, thank you, Madam Mayor. I had two things that I had wanted to bring up at our last meeting, but somehow it slipped out of my attention. We had just completed our Appreciate Peoria community development outreach to our neighborhoods, and I'm holding in my hand, that none of you can see, a congratulations on a job well done card. That's a placard that our community development team left at people's homes who were keeping their properties up nice, and you know, the positive reinforcement type thing. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Joe Doolin and the whole community development department for a job well done, because that was a great exercise in engaging with the neighbors and letting people know that the city of Peoria does appreciate their efforts. And the second postcard that I'm holding was an important notice that came out from the city a couple weeks ago, and it says, "Be prepared for energy bill increases." And I just wanted to thank the manager probably Stacey Peterson had something to do with this as well, in putting this unfortunate situation with energy aggregation in terms that I think a lot of people were able to understand. So people tell us oftentimes, well, I didn't know about this or that. And, you know, we always make the comment, we're living in 2022, there's more ways to communicate, but it seems like it's harder than ever to do so. So I thought this was a very good proactive way. And for those of us that have got our Ameren bills, we know what they were talking about. And then finally, if I may, the disadvantage, which are many of doing a council meeting remotely, is that you don't get to see who's in the room. And I understand that Friendship House CEO Marcellus Somerville is in the house, and I wanted to recognize him and, with the permission of the council, see if he had any comments that he would like to share in regards to the item that we had just approved a few moments ago.
He's walking to the mic, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Welcome,
That's all I have then.
Mr. Somerville.
Thank you. I did have a few comments. I don't know how this procedure really works, to be honest, but I just wanted to say thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councilmen and councilwomen, for all your work and due diligence in the process. So I just wanted to thank you for seeing the project, seeing the interest in Peoria Friendship House, trying to feed the community, trying to do something great here and truly beautify the area. So last month we did over 10,000 meals. So I came here thinking, imagine once we get the kitchen filled and done, how many meals we'll fill. So thank you guys. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilman Riggenbach, anything else?
That's it. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Very good. Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the city council. We have not received any cards. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak.
Okay. No.
No. Then we are at executive session.
Okay, and so we're going to need two motions, one to go into exec and then one to adjourn.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilman Sear?
Move to adjourn.
Oh, I think we need the
session.
I move to move into executive session.
Madam Mayor, if I could, Corporation Counsel needs to cite the reasons why.
Yes.
Thank you. We need executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C1 to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or performance of a specific employee. 2C1 or 2C11, probable or pending litigation. 2C21, closed session minutes.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Sears, seconded by Councilman Kelly to go into executive session. Please cast your ballots. Councilman Riggenbach?
Aye.
Recreago?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
And we are at adjournment.
And can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilman Allen, seconded by Councilwoman Jackson. Please cast your ballots. Councilman Riggenbach?
Aye.
Councilman Recreago?
Aye.
Hey, thank you for your service.